Howdy folks, and welcome back to the homestead. Today's project is to make a center organizer for our master closet at the new house. We have an incredibly small master closet at our house. It is, I can't overstate it enough. It is incredibly small. So we decided we wanted to make a center organizer big enough for just a few baskets with double hanging rods on either side. And by doing this, we were really able to increase the usable space in our closet and almost double the amount of space we could hang clothes up on. So the first step in doing this, of course, I made a CAD plan, drew it up and measured and kind of did everything, so I knew what to cut. That's the easiest thing for me to do. And once I had those plans, I could just pretty much make it out of one sheet of plywood. I'm having trouble with my 18-volt circular saw batteries. I have a lot more cutting to do, and at this point I gave up trying to use the cordless circular saw, and we're getting ready to move over into the corded one. Infinite power, cuts way better. It's got a better blade on it. It cuts, just makes a nicer cut. So we're going to limp through this cut with this saw since I've already started it. I really like using these edge guides or cut guides, whatever you want to call them, for my circular saws, because basically you can just mark where you want to cut and you have these guides set up, so all you have to do is line them up with your marks, clamp them down, and then start cutting. This one is 8 feet long and it was made for my circular saw, and luckily I was able to repurpose it for my corded circular saw. So I made it to fit this one, labeled it so I would never forget which saw it was for, and now I set it up and go to town. Oh yeah, much better. You can stack these two long pieces up, since these are going to be the sides of the piece. Measure the length of the side, and then since they're stacked, I can clamp them together and cut them at the same time. Save me a step. I have a 4-foot cut guide as well. I've got one of these for both saws. Although now that I've really started using that corded saw, I don't use the cordless one a whole lot. For cutting bigger, thicker materials like 3/4 inch plywood or 2x4s or anything like that, where you're really cutting through a lot of material, you just can't beat the power of a corded saw. And since that 8-foot guide isn't quite I mean, it's rigid, but it's not super rigid, I guess. The cuts weren't perfect, so again, while these are stacked up, just take a block plane and clean those edges up, trying to even them out. And the next thing to do is take the profile of the baseboard inside the closet. I had that little contour gauge, matched the contour in the closet, lined it up on the pieces, mark it, and then cut it with a jigsaw. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's going in the closet. No one's ever going to see it, so it just has to be big enough to not interfere with the cabinet. Super easy. With some of these leftover pieces, we're making the adjustable shelves for the cabinet. This is a new blade on that table saw, and man, it cuts good. Once everything's cut, sand everything to, I think I sanded these to 120 grit. That didn't go really fine on it because we're painting these cabinets. All the sanding's done. Clean up the edges with a sanding block, just to kind of help smooth those rough edges up. I didn't want to get after them with a mechanical, random orbit sander or anything, just because I didn't want to round over the edges. So the sanding block works good. Work through those shelves. And now we can use pocket holes to hold everything together. So the center shelf in the cabinet is fixed. I can't adjust it. It's going to stay there forever. And again, it's just a sturdy cabinet. Then the top shelf is also fixed. It spans the entire width of the closet. So marking the pocket holes. I'm a big fan of pocket holes. They're super handy. They're easy. They're hard to screw up. So I mark where I want them. It takes me a minute because I really haven't built anything in a while. So I mark where I want them, and then I have to go back and remember, oh yeah, I need to put these on the edges because I lined my pocket hole jig up on the edge, not necessarily on the top. I started off using my small square, and then I remembered I needed to go to the middle, so then I had to get the big one anyway. It's not a big deal, but now I just have something else stacked on top of my workpiece. Moving on now to drill the pocket holes in the top of the cabinet. I call it a cabinet. It's the center organizer. I mean, it's basically built like a cabinet with no back or anything. It's just kind of screwing boards together. So at the top of the cabinet, those pocket holes are going to hold the top shelf on. So those holes are drilled, getting ready to line everything up so we can screw that center shelf in. And really, this thing starts to take shape now. Measure and mark the location of the shelf. Oh good, more sanding. One of the bigger downsides to trying to use pocket holes on stuff is whenever you're building something that's not real big in the middle, you have to get creative on how you get in there with the drill. So I switched up from using my drill with a torque setting to the impact driver, where your trigger finger is the torque setting. So it's really easy to shoot through plywood when you're using an impact driver, especially with these pocket holes. So if you're careful, it does just fine. But you gotta be careful. Finesse is the name of the game. These little pieces are just to help space out and stabilize the top and the bottom of the cabinet. And it gives me something to anchor into. I can anchor the whole assembly to the wall into a stud with these. Here I'm using my adjustable shelf pin jig. I like adjustable shelves, and the shelf pins are pretty easy. I've found that with adjustable shelf pins, pretty much once you get them set, you don't ever move them again, but I like having the option for flexibility. Those look good, and now we move on to paint and primer. I start off using this can of primer. I didn't realize how empty it was, and so just to use it up, I started off just kind of focusing on the edges of this cabinet. So the first coat is not very thick and it doesn't cover everything. It gets the job started though. More primer. All right, I finally got all the primer on all the shelves, pieces, cabinet, I mean just the whole assemblies. Finally got primer on it, and I got the first coat of, Megan picked out an antique white. So it's not quite like primer white. Here, there's the primer. I know the lighting's not the best, but you can kind of see the difference. That antique white's more of an, well, I don't want to say ivory because it's not really an ivory color, but I guess it's just antique. But hopefully it's still bright enough that it'll make the closet look better, and it won't show dirt if we get, I mean, it's a closet, how much dirt's it gonna get on it, but you know, dirt, dust, anything like that, it won't quite show up as bad as it does on normal white. But this is looking, I mean, it's looking great. The primer when you prime these edges on this, I mean, this is raw plywood, it ends up looking pretty good. Now you've still got some voids here and let's see, void there. It's not perfect and it's not meant to be perfect. It's meant to be an inexpensive way of doing things. So yeah, book match voids on either side. You can tell these two were cut at the same time. All right, so we got our last coat of antique white on everything. Cabinet, shelves, the top shelf right there. So we're done with paint. Now it's time, we're gonna put a few coats of polyacrylic. It seems to work really well. It's water-based, so it's easy to clean up. That's the nicest thing. I don't have to throw away my rollers when I'm done with them. So we'll get that going. Probably 2 coats on everything. I don't think it'll need 3, but we'll see what happens. But hey, we're almost done. Primer, paint, poly, it's all done now. So I'm gonna show you something. It's kind of crazy. This is the adjustable shelf, if I can get the angle to work right here. It's the same as that. I mean, these are all the same, but check out, for one, it's tighter in the back and there is a huge gap right there. Now, we'll be able to get this set up. It's not gonna be the end of the world. I mean, look at that. That's quite the gap here. It's okay. I mean, this is one of the, I mean, I would have thought this piece of plywood would be better than what it is. That's okay. It's not the end of the world. Let's get this thing moved inside. Here's a before shot of the closet. Pretty simple and very small. We take everything out and put the organizer in and add those double hanging rods in the center baskets. And I mean, it is an improvement. Megan and I have a way to separate our clothes, which wasn't hard before, but I mean, it's just so much nicer. It is so much nicer than what it was before. The whole project, I mean, the whole point of this was to be inexpensive and a way to kind of do it by ourselves, which, I mean, we make a lot of stuff, so it's easy to do the by ourselves part, but trying to do it in an inexpensive way that still looks good, and I really think it looks good. Couldn't be happier. Well, thank you for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel and like this video, tell your friends about it, and thanks again, guys. We'll see you soon.
Boy. You drop it?